Hey, what's up, guys? So I decided to do a video because there was some things that, a lot of things that I didn't, wasn't expecting, and that I didn't know. So I just thought I'd put this video together and help you guys out in case you're looking to buy a welder or just recently bought one and have no idea what to do. Disclaimer: I am not a welder. I just picked up my first welder. I'm going to be using it for hobby. Hopefully, I'll get better and be able to introduce it into my business. But I'm not a welder. If you're looking for advice on welding, this is not the video. I am also not an electrician. I am well-rounded. I know a little bit about it, but I'm not a licensed electrician. If you have any trouble and don't feel confident with it, obviously the advice is contact a local licensed electrician that knows your local codes. With that said, this is what I did and what got me up and running. So for years I've been wanting to buy a welder, and finally the wife gave the okay, and she saw the potential in adding a welder to our business, hopefully in the future. So we went and got a welder, Multimatic 220. Pretty excited about it. Haven't been able to play with it. Hopefully tomorrow we'll be playing with it. I got everything I think set up. First thing you need to consider, things you need to consider. Once you decide that you're going to buy a welder and you come up with a budget, I would say go ahead and double that number. Okay, that's a pretty safe number to go with. There's gonna be a lot of things that, if you're not familiar with welding, like I am not, there's gonna be a lot of things that are gonna come up that are expenses that you probably were not expecting. Some of those things: gloves, magnets. I guess they come in all kinds of different sizes for different stuff that you're going to be working on. Gloves, magnets, either a welding jacket or welding sleeves, some of these welding pliers, a helmet or hood or whatever welders call it. This is your gas for whatever your type of welding you're going to be using. It's not cheap. I think it was like $100 or so for a tank. I bought two of them. Things that are going to come in handy are going to be grinders, sanding discs, consumables for the welder, which I still don't think I know exactly what all they are, but like welding tips and contact tip, and there's a bunch of other stuff that they'll break it down to you at the store when they're trying to get more sales out of you. There's also going to be possibly a welding table that you may or may not need. You could weld on the ground, I guess. If you're going to be buying a welding table, the steel for the welding table is not cheap, because I guess it has to be a very thick tabletop so that it doesn't warp on you, and so that you can build things that are actually flat. So with that said, it's going to be a heavy table, and I have a small shop, so you got to buy casters for your table. I need to be able to move it around as I do some of my other projects. That's it so far, or that I can think of right now. I'm quickly putting this together. The next thing is electrical. You need to take electrical into consideration. If you don't know about electricity or how to run wire, this could get expensive. I mean, I'm in Chicago, and an electrician would charge me easy $800 to run a 220 line in my shop. If you don't have a panel in your shop, you have to run electrical from your house all the way to your shop to have a 220 line. When I built my shop, we ran a panel to the shop, so it's fairly easy. But it's something that can get very expensive very quickly. In regards to electrical, take into consideration what tools you have in your shop already that run on 220. So for example, my table saw ran on one of these old 1050Rs, which is a three-prong 240 outlet. Okay, This is the one that used to be on my table saw, and this was the plug for it. Okay, and after doing a lot of research, I knew that the welder that I wanted, being the Multimatic 220 in this case, came with this plug. Okay, this does not go with this. Okay, so I have two options. I can run a new line, which I don't want to, or I can see if I can swap the old plug on my table saw to one just like this one. Luckily for me, I found it at a local orange store, and I was able to swap out the table saw plug to be exactly the same as this one. Okay, so that allowed me to keep the 220 that I already have in my shop and just swap out one plug and be ready to play both with my table saw and the welder. Other things to take into consideration are going to be future tools that you want to buy or have in your shop. In my case, I want to have a plasma cutter sometime in the near future. Research if it's going to be a 240, research what kind of plug it's going to come with, the one that you want to buy. If you cannot get all of your tools to match, you're going to need an adapter. Okay, one that, for example, goes from this to this guy, right? I had no luck finding such things in Chicago. I found that your best bet was to go to Amazon and order them online. The reason I'm sharing this with you is because I don't want you to get home with your brand new welder or plasma or table saw and find out that you cannot plug it in and that you need an adapter because they don't have it locally and they're gonna have to order it, and because of Corona it's gonna take 2 weeks to get home. So now you got a brand new welder and you have no way to plug it in. That's really gonna suck. Although the Multimatic 220 runs on 110, so I could play if I wanted to. But anyway, I addressed this. So yeah, do your research on power and wiring and what you're gonna need, even down to your outlet, so that you can actually get home with your new toy and start playing. Some things, if you're not very familiar with electrical, just to give you an idea, and again, I'm not an electrician and this is not professional advice, this is just what I did to get me going. Is it gonna work? Maybe, maybe not, I don't know, I'm not a welder. But currently, I have 10 gauge wire running in my 240 line in a 30 amp breaker, okay? And that works for my table saw, which is a behemoth. And I did a lot of research on exactly, which is the reason why I decided to put this video together, because I looked it up and I just couldn't really find one thing that gave me the answers to the questions that I was looking for. So I'll give you guys a quick rundown of the info that I gathered, stuff that I put together, and that again, hopefully will work for me. I still have no idea if my welder is gonna work on 10 gauge wire and 30 amp breaker. It's a relatively short run. So with electricity, the length of the run matters. The gauge of the wire matters. If you don't know about electrical, the bigger the number, the smaller the wire, and vice versa. So in this case, 10 gauge is pretty big, not the biggest, but to give you an idea, your outlets at home are either 14 or 12 gauge. So 10 gauge being next, then 8, then 6. So when you're doing your research to buy a welder, look at how much they draw. And I wrote down some info here to share with you, because I don't have it memorized. But I did the research on my Millermatic 220, and I found out from the Miller website that my specific unit draws between 25 and 30 amps. Volts, depending on the setup that you're running, whether it be MIG, stick, or TIG. So I now know that I'm somewhere between 25 and 30, okay? And that's it, like so it's 27 at 200 amps, 21 at 170 amps, 170 amps being what the machine is putting out, or 200 amps is what the machine is putting out. So every time the machine is putting that out, it's drawing 27 amp volts from the wire, okay? So again, that's why the range is between 25 and 30, okay? So I know that at max, my welder is gonna draw 30 volts, which my wire can handle. Could it get maxed out and overheat and trip the breaker? Yes, but again, I am a hobby welder. I'm gonna be doing dots and like tiny lines. I'm not, or beads. Sorry if I'm offending any welder out there. But in future, if I have to upgrade my line, I will do that. I just thought I got a 10 gauge with a 30 amp. I'll give it a try and see what happens. Also, to give you an idea on the parameters, depending on the welder, the things that you need to know is how much they're gonna draw, how much input they need when they output, when you're welding, okay? And according to the World Wide Web, which isn't always true, again, if your welder draws between 40 and 50 volts, okay, if it needs that input, you need a 50 amp breaker along with 6 gauge wire, okay? If your welder goes between 30 and 40, you need a 40 amp breaker, 8 gauge wire. And if your welder, or any other item for that matter, it could be a table saw, it could be a drill press, it could be a plasma cutter. If it's 30 or below, okay, if it requires 30 volts or below, then a 30 amp breaker and a 10 gauge wire will be enough. As you can see, 30 and below requires 30 and 10, 30 amp breaker and 10 gauge wire. I'm right there. I'm at 25 and 30, okay? So that's why I'm saying my operation might work, it might not. If in the future when I get better, I start having longer welding sessions, maybe my breaker will trip. Maybe it won't, we'll see. But those are some of the things that I had a kind of trouble tracking down, and hopefully this video will be helpful. If you found it helpful, please give me a thumbs up. If you got any questions, go ahead and shoot them my way, and I'll do my best to answer them. Good luck, and hope you enjoy your new toy. Peace.